got here safely and that we're able to come fellowship in your house. Lord, thank you for this lesson. We need to know our roots so we can know why things are the way they are and how grateful we ought to be. So as we get into this lesson, Lord, just ask that you would open the ears to hear what you would have them to hear, have me to speak the words you would have me to speak, and close my mouth to things you would have me to not say. Lord, that's the most important thing. And we give you the praise and glory and the honor for all the knowledge and wisdom that we gain from this. And amen. All right. So this lesson, I'm telling you what, we're going over the sacrifices in Leviticus. So, yeah, let's just get started in the Word. So we're in Leviticus 1 through 4. And actually, when I was reading this, it goes for longer, but we'll just get into it. So this is about the law of burnt offerings. Now, and I'm reading in the NASB. Leviticus 1:1. Now the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tent of meeting, saying, Speak to the sons of Israel and say to them, When any one of you brings an offering to the Lord, you shall bring your offering of livestock from the herd or the flock. If his offering is a burnt offering from the herd, he shall offer a male without defect. He shall offer it at the doorway of the tent of meeting, so that he may be accepted before the Lord. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the burnt offering, so that it may be accepted for him to make atonement on his behalf. Okay. Something I noticed about this, and I just noticed more. I was like, first of all, why only the herd or the flock? Because they also mention pigeons and turtle. Is it turtle doves? Is that the other one? I think so. But then I was reading it said of livestock. So birds, are they considered livestock? They're not considered livestock. So that doesn't necessarily exclude birds from this whole burnt offering. And what I was saying earlier, how this goes on from 4, the rest of the chapter goes on to talk about the flock and then the birds. So it wasn't just, like, part of my confusion was like, what? You could only, I mean, if you wanted to, this kind of a whole burnt offering was brought of free will. It's, so I'm like, well, why does he limit it to just a bull or goat? Because back in those times, the really impoverished people, they couldn't afford bulls or goats. They had to do birds. So that cleared that up for me. I've had questions about this lesson. Like, even after I read it, I was like, what on earth? I don't even know. So thank you, Lord, for your revelation, because it says of livestock, the herd or the flock. But that's not including birds. So birds is included in this first sacrifice. I was like, that doesn't even make any sense. Only rich people can give free offerings? This economy, no, I'm just playing. Okay, now we're going to read Leviticus 3:1 through 5. Oh, Lord. Okay. So the law, now this is for peace offerings. The first one was for whole burnt offerings. This is for peace offerings. Now, if his offering is a sacrifice of peace offerings, if he is going to offer from the herd, whether male or female, he shall offer it without defect before the Lord. And he shall lay his hand on the head of the offering and slaughter it at the doorway of the tent of meeting. And Aaron's sons and priests shall sprinkle the blood around the altar. From the sacrifice of the peace offerings, he shall then present an offering by fire to the Lord, and the fat that covers the entrails, and all of the fat that is on the entrails, and the 2 kidneys with the fat that is on them, which is on the loins, and the lobe of the liver, which he shall remove with the kidneys. Then Aaron's sons shall offer it up in smoke on the altar on the burnt offering, which is on the wood that is on the fire. It is an offering by fire of a soothing aroma to the Lord. So as you can see from this, he was very particular about how he wanted things done. It wasn't just, here, take this lamb and just throw it over there on the fire. And like the rest of this chapter also talks about how to sacrifice the other things, besides just the herd, but also the flock. Let's turn now to Leviticus 6. So now this is the guilt offering. This is if you've done something wrong. No one's ever done this, I know. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, when a person sins and acts unfaithfully against the Lord and disavows the rightful claim of his neighbor regarding a deposit or a security entrusted to him, or regarding robbery, or he has extorted from his neighbor, or found what was lost and lied about it, and swore falsely, so that he sins regarding any of the things that people do. So that's long. That's long, like it's a huge list of if you do this or this or this or this or this. Pretty much includes everything. Like everything you could possibly do bad to anyone else. Then it shall be, when he sins and becomes guilty, that he shall restore what he took by robbery, or acquired by extortion, or the deposit which was entrusted to him, or the lost property which he found, or anything about which he swore falsely. He shall make restitution for it in full, and add to it a fifth more. He shall give it to the ones to whom it belongs on the day he presents his guilt offering. Then he shall bring the priest his guilt offering to the Lord, a ram without defect from the flock, according to your assessment, as a guilt offering. And the priest shall make atonement for him before the Lord, and he will be forgiven for any one of the things which he has done to incur guilt. Okay. What I found interesting about that, not only are you supposed to give the guilt offering, but you're supposed to do restitution plus 15. Let's see, was it 58? A fifth, plus a fifth of what it was owed. So, of what the worth of it was, not necessarily owed, but what the worth of it was. So, if you cheated somebody on a deal, you had to do the guilt offering, and then you had to give on the same day that you did the guilt offering the worth of what it was that you cheated, and then a fifth besides back to that person. Same day that you did the guilt offering. Then you brought the guilt offering and used how it was. So there was a system for dealing with all the things. Oh, we're done with that.
Now they call it interest.
Yeah, now they call it interest. No, that's called restitution.
Yeah, I know.
But interest on the restitution is what that is. But it doesn't say the longer you go, the more it piles up, though. So the interest is a new form of torture.
Yeah.
So one of the most important facets of religion in the ancient Israel included the sacrificial system. For many believers today, it can be difficult to understand why God required sacrifices and what purposes they served. Because, of course, sacrifices are important to know, like I said, but we don't need to do that system now anymore because Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice. As Lee said before service, that all of this, like this system, the sacrificial system, was a very bloody one. Very bloody. I mean, can you imagine how many animals are sacrificed in this? But all of that blood didn't amount to one drop of Jesus' blood. This was only temporary, the system was, until the true sacrifice came. So it's hard for us to understand why all of that was important, because we have this new system now that we take for granted. But I think it's important to know our history so we don't take it for granted. Studying the different types of offerings found in the Old Testament can help us better understand the role they played in Israel's worship and why they were important. We will consider a few of the more prominent sacrifices. So we'll go over a little bit what we did, but it tells more things about it. So among the different sacrifices listed in the Old Testament, the burnt offering constituted one of the more prevalent and multifaceted offerings in Israel's liturgy. The burnt offering was a free will offering that shared many characteristics with the sin or purification offering, also mentioned in Leviticus, which we didn't really talk about because we went 1, 3, 6, and that was in chapter 4. Something for y'all to look at later if you want to know more about that. Both offerings require the entire animal to be consumed on the altar, since it belonged exclusively to God. When the fire turned the meat and inner parts of the animal into smoke, it became an aroma pleasing to the Lord. Symbolically, as the smoke from the sacrifice wafted into the air, God could smell the aroma of the animal offered and accepted it as a suitable gift. For these sacrifices, different types of animals could be presented, depending on one's personal and economic status. Exactly like I said, if you were an impoverished person, you could use a pigeon. You could use a pigeon was pretty much, depending on your status, if you gave freely what you had, it was the same as if a rich person gave a bull. And what that says to me is God gave everyone away, which he always has and he always will. But he gave everyone away at that point to be able to do this. For the sacrifice, different types of animals could be, a bull, sheep, goat, or turtle-dove pigeon. Yes, that's right. I knew it. I remember this brain works from, once or twice a week. Since the sacrifice represented a gift to God, the Israelites had to offer their best animal to the Lord, a male, given their patriarchal society. I don't like the way they said that, but a male without defect. The burnt offering served a variety of religious purposes, depending on the intention of the presenter. As a voluntary offering, the burnt sacrifice could function as a humble gesture of gratitude, whereby the individual acknowledged God's goodness and provision. Additionally, a burnt offering could be presented to entreat God's favor when a situation warranted God's attention or intervention. Is that y'all's understanding of it as well? Because that was like, at the beginning, I'm like, what's the purpose of this? Like, okay, there's the guilt offering, I understand that. There's the peace one, I understand that. But they talk about this one at the beginning, and I'm like, okay. So that was that's what that was about. So it was a humble gesture of gratitude, whereby the individual acknowledged God's goodness and provision. It could also be presented to entreat God's favor when a situation warranted God's attention or intervention. The burnt offering could also signify the presenter's unconditional devotion to God, as well as the need for atonement.
It's interesting that on the just the symbolism of that the flesh had to be burned away. Mm-hmm. What are we doing whenever Christ comes into our life? He is removing that flesh. When we really let him in, he's removing that fleshy side of us.
Yeah.
Now, it's obviously a more complete work what's done in us than burn a pigeon or anything else.
Yeah.
I'm just.
Well, what's interesting, which one it was, I can't remember, but he talks about the fat and the entrails and stuff, and the fat is really interesting to me, because we're being purified, and that's kind of like removal.
Yeah, God has a way of removing all the extra
which is kind of like, to me, that's like that. That reminds me of that fat. I'm like, okay. But then it also said, I'll just keep reading because it's going to get into it. When atonement prompted the occasion for sacrifice, the blood of the animal in both the burnt and sin purification offerings acted as a ritual detergent that purified the person and enabled the worshiper to stand in the holy presence of God. The act of laying one's hand on the animal signified ownership, so that the benefits of the sacrifice would be accrued to the donor. So if you didn't put your hand on it, you didn't get, you didn't get that's why they told you to put your hand on it. It's kind of like a transfer. Well, it talks more about it here too. So, okay. More importantly, these atonement offerings cleansed the sanctuary from the contaminating residue of the people's sin. For this reason, the priest applied blood to the sides of the altar, the curtain of the sanctuary, and to the mercy seat on the Day of Atonement. Since the sanctuary served as God's dwelling place on earth, this action was necessary as God could not inhabit the sanctuary if pollution remained. So that's interesting too. That, of course, people are going to be in there. People sin. So that was like spiritual Lysol. Like the best spiritual Lysol. It's like better than Clorox. Oh gosh, I'm silly. Let's see. Atonement on behalf of the community required a sin and purification offering on the Day of Atonement, when the high priest entered into the Holy of Holies to make intercession for the people. The Holy of Holies contained the Ark of the Covenant, which was covered by the lid known as the atonement cover, or the mercy seat. Mounted on top of the mercy seat were 2 cherubim with outstretched wings that served as a type of throne or footstool where the presence of God rested. To properly access the Holy of Holies, to properly access the Holy of Holies, the high priest had to be in a state of physical and moral purity. Because remember, they tied a rope to the priest's legs. If they had any secrets and they were struck down, they could pull them out. So that's how intense this was. So he had to be for his own safety, not only for his purpose there, which was to make atonement for the whole nation on the Day of Atonement. But if he was not pure, he lost his life. Okay. As part of his religious preparation, he took a ritual bath before donning the traditional clothing of the priesthood, the tunic, linen garments, sash, and turban. In addition, the mandatory sacrifices had to be presented on the priest's behalf before he could minister in God's presence. So this is what I was saying about all the blood. Like not only did he give the sacrifice for the nation, but then he had to have sacrifices presented for himself so that he could then present the sacrifice. Like this was a lot. This was a lot.
It was all fulfilled in Jesus.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's what I was saying was as much blood as there was in this system, that all of it didn't amount to one drop of Jesus' blood. That's what I was saying when we were getting started.
Every little thing in there, if you trace it out carefully, you'll find that it was fulfilled in Jesus' life and death.
Yeah.
There was even the rabbis even told they weren't our friends when they wrote during New Testament times. But they told even about the curtain being torn.
That curtain was really, really thick. I'm like, oh, the veil was torn. Like, no, when you research it, that veil was thick.
Yeah, you couldn't tear it by yourself.
Yeah, it was very, very thick. And that, people are like, oh, the veil was torn. No, like there's a lot more to that.
There's also another rabbi
like
writing where they tell not only that happened, but the temple doors wouldn't remain shut anymore.
Oh.
They kept popping open of the Holy of Holies.
Oh wow.
They told on themselves, didn't they?
Let's see. Let me get back into this thing and figure out where I was. Let's see. In addition to mandatory sacrifices, had to be okay. God instructed that a bull be presented as a sin purification offering, and the blood of the bull applied to and in front of the mercy seat 7 times. 2 goats were then presented for the sin purification offerings for the community at the entrance to the sanctuary. This part is really interesting to me. The procedure to mediate atonement on behalf of the community included a 2-step process. In the initial offering, the blood from the first goat, so the first goat was killed and sacrificed in that way, was cleansed the sanctuary from any lingering sin. Not only did the sin purification offering of the first goat disinfect the sanctuary, but its effects extended to the altar on which the animal was sacrificed, as well as to the Holy of Holies, the location of the Ark of the Covenant. So this part is what I was talking about. After cleansing the sanctuary, the high priest directed his attention to the second goat. This goat symbolically took on the sins of the people, the scapegoat. That's where the scapegoat comes from. All their wickedness and rebellion. The transfer of sin took place as the high priest placed both his hands on the goat's head and then confessed the sins of the people over it. As the goat took on the community's collective guilt, sometimes referred to as Azazel or the scapegoat, the animal was subsequently led out into the wilderness and released into the uninhabited barren landscape, never to return. So they put all their sin and blame and guilt on the goat, and then they sent it away.
That's
Not a beautiful picture of our sins.
yeah.
Taken away.
And that's the scapegoat.
You know, when you think about that, exactly what Wayne was talking about. That is another Christ symbolism too. When you think
Yes.
about that. And then, yeah, I've wondered about what somebody that was in sin at that point, how frustrating that must have been. And
The system.
Think about it. I mean, there would have been, okay, you've got people even competing over who's got, the richest sacrifice. You know that would have happened. The people would have been competing about, oh, they just got doves, and we got this.
Look at their pigeon.
You would have had the frustration of, I know, it's silly, but that would have been.
Yeah, that was the thing. That was a status
They
symbol.
were all sinners, but they were like, well, I've got to.
Even that was nitpicked because of the way things were.
But how frustrating must it have been to see all these rules and to know that you needed help, and when you're confronted with something like this, given your apparent status, you might be a servant, or at that time a woman wasn't allowed in certain parts of the temple. Even like a eunuch was not allowed in certain parts of the temple. And then there's only one priest that could come to the Holy of Holies. How frustrating that must have been to be like, why bother? You know somebody who dealt with that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, to know that's exactly why when Christ was crucified, the veil of the curtain was torn in two.
That's how huge it is.
That's the significance of that. Everybody can come right into the throne room.
Mm-hmm.
So that frustration.
To put it in perspective, as I was saying before, if you went into that area and you weren't purified, you were killed.
Yeah.
And you were drug out via the rope on your leg.
Yeah.
So this is a place only certain people can go, and if they don't have their ducks in a row, they die instantly. And we're allowed to go there in our sinful nature. We're allowed to go there now. And we don't die from that, at least, from going there.
There was a lot more to the goat thing there. They had to be twin perfect goats.
Mm-hmm.
And there were lots drawn.
There were what?
A lot was drawn
Oh,
to
okay.
say which one was the sacrifice and which one was to be out in the wilderness.
In the wilderness.
I wonder how long that goat lasted in the wilderness. They had wild animals out there then.
And it was the uninhabited area, and who knows how much, food the goat had to even, it didn't last very long, I'm sure. This symbolic gesture served as a tangible and powerful reminder that God had removed the sins of the people and cast it away permanently from their residence. The goat.
How Jesus said that it was as far as the east is from the west. Now, he could have said north and south, but that's a distance. But east and west never meet.
Mm.
Isn't that something? The sins are that far away.
Yeah.
Opposite direction.
Yeah. Whereas the burnt and sin purification offerings focused on the people's relationship with God, other offerings address relationships among members of the community. One such sacrifice included the fellowship offering, also known as the peace offering. Unlike the burnt or sin purification offering, the sacrificial animal would include a male or female, whether selected from the cattle, sheep, or goats, while the internal organs such as the kidney and liver were required to be burnt up on the offering. Various portions of the animal, such as the breast or right thigh, were set aside so that the meat and the varieties of bread could be consumed by the priest along with the worshippers. The fellowship peace offering did not function as an expiation for sin. Rather, it served to foster peaceful relations among the members of the community before God. So it's like asking God to, well, it's an offering. Lord, help us to be peaceful and unified. And it was a petition. Another offering that facilitated reconciliation and the unity among the Israelites included the guilt offering, which I kind of went over that a little bit already. This guilt offering was designed to address offenses that one committed against another person, whether through deceit, extortion, theft, or false statements. The guilt offering did not refer to one's conscience, but to the debt one owed to another because of dishonesty. Sometimes called the trespass offering or reparation offering, the purpose of this offering was to make amends or reparations for one's sin against another member of the community. In addition to presenting a ram as a sacrifice offering, the guilt offering required restitution, whereby the guilty party had to restore what was stolen or acquired through fraud. Furthermore, an additional penalty of 1/5 value, 20% of what was stolen, was assessed. So, that's what I was saying all before. But, 1/5 versus 20%. 20% is well, it's not more, of course, but that number it seems more realistic, even though it's the same. I'm saying, like, percentages versus fifths, like really like 20%. that's a bit. So it behooved you to not do these things. Ultimately, the sacrificial system served as an instrument of God's grace that restored the vertical and horizontal relationships within Israel's covenant life. So, from humanity to God and from person to person. The redemption benefits mediated through the various sacrificial offerings in the Old Testament are now realized in the person of Jesus Christ, who became the perfect and eternal sacrifice for all humanity.
The sacrifice all the sacrifices had to be approved by actual relatives of Aaron. Through Aaron's line, there was a lot of other priests, but they had to be in Aaron's line. And Joseph, Jesus' father, was in Aaron's line. Is that cool or what?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of coincidences when you follow the lineage of Jesus. A lot of really interesting and unique and fun, in my opinion, coincidences.
It all points to Christ, all of it.
Exactly.
And he was absolutely the fulfillment of the law. I'm so glad that he can be just him, can be all of those things. That we were talking about, fellowship, forgiveness, and beyond even that, all those things that we need to make us whole.
Yeah.
We can be all those things. We don't have to sit there and kind of figure out. And then there's not any ranking of offenses. There's not any ranking of offerings. We simply give our heart.
Can you imagine trying to find the unblemished lamb? Like, if you as many lambs and
Might be frustrating,
and bulls even had to be bred to keep this system up. Regardless of food now, the amount of livestock they had to have to keep the system going, and they had to find the most unblemished one. Can you imagine how frustrating that must? Like, how does this one and this one compare? Is this one's nose bigger, or is this one's nose like? Is there a spot on this one's toe, or like unblemished?
That's the irony of it, because you're saying you need they were saying you need an unblemished animal from a blemished creation. So you ain't going to find it, really. That's the reality of it. So anybody that was looking, that had a set of opinions or thoughts about that, would say, "Oh, well, that's not perfect because that. That's not right because there was only one unblemished lamb. He was unblemished out there. That was it."
Right.
And that's the interesting thing about that too.
Yeah.
So there's really nothing to find about it anymore. It's all Christ.
Oh yeah.
He is the fulfillment.
That's what I was saying about. Actually, that's interesting. because I was talking about family dynamics and things with someone yesterday. Not just family, but family, community, class, whatever kind of dynamic, whatever kind of group dynamics. I learned working with my foster child, I learned sometimes it was easier to just change the environment than to argue about what they should or should not do. It was easier to just change the environment and remove that opportunity. And that's what I did a lot of times. Because I didn't want to fight. And I could have had a battle every single day, multiple times a day. So rather than that, I just changed the environment. And I didn't have to deal with it anymore. And that's kind of what God did. He changed the environment. He changed the game entirely. I'll say game, but that doesn't sound right, but he changed the rules entirely. We don't have to do any of the things that, well, not any of them. We don't have to do the sacrifices that they had to do back then. And that's because he changed the environment. He changed the rules for us because it was impossible for us to do. It was just impossible. The system was only temporary. And ultimately, that's the result of this lesson is what they had to go through. We can walk right into the throne room and ask forgiveness ourselves rather than going through all of these avenues that they had to go through. And if you were really if you weren't just going through the motions oh, I cheated this person, I should go say I'm sorry because it's what I ought to do. If you weren't doing that, if you were really petitioning and really sincere, like we said, how frustrating that would be to not be able to just go and tell the Lord your sincerity. Because you had to go through the priest. Was he sincere that day? Or was he just going through the motions? There's a lot to say there. A lot to think about there. Any other questions, comments?
Did Jesus not come to fulfill the law?
Absolutely.
Which is what he did.
Yeah.
He didn't come to change it, he came to
Fulfill it.
fulfill it.
Make it null and void. Yeah. So, well, let's close. We'll get ready for worship. Lord, thank you so much for your word. Thank you so much that you've given